Welcome everyone to the Home Services Summit webinar series. We've got Stephen Montgomery on here from ResiBrands, and I'm looking forward to this conversation for a while, actually. As you all know, these sessions are live. We've got people who are joining us and able to share their ideas or questions as we're having this conversation. Feel free to join the chat. In fact, I'm going to open the chat up right now so that I can see it. And if you've ever got questions along the way, load it in there, and I'll make sure that either I or Stephen answer those questions for you. Let me go ahead and give you his background if you don't already know. It's a great story. As the founder and CEO of ResiBrands, which owns Pink Windows Cleaning, we were just talking about that backstage, That One Painter, and Garage Up. That One Painter is now one of the fastest growing painting brands. I actually dare to say probably one of the fastest growing brands in home services anyway. I mean, to get to 300 locations in the time frame you've done is nothing short of a miracle. Many people just dream of getting to 50, and you've managed to get 300, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's made it his mission to help others succeed through entrepreneurship and to provide them with the tools and support they need to build a successful business. In fact, to that effect, he's actually launched a couple other services arms in his Resi brand platform, Resi Creative, which helps franchisees with cutting edge marketing, and then Resi Connect, that does all their appointment setting and so forth to help them connect with their potential customers. His passion for entrepreneurship extends beyond his professional life. He also runs a mission nonprofit in Africa called Commission Network. And he's a proud father of 4. Are you all done? Can you go for one more?
Oh, 4 is good. I'm very glad we had the 4th, but no more.
Yeah. Having 5 kids myself, I can tell you it is definitely very rewarding, but also very challenging. How old is your oldest child?
8. So my kids are 8, 6, 4, 2.
Yeah, that's it. The winning recipe right there. Every 2 years, just
every 2 years, and it's boy, girl. So we got a good.
No, I'm exactly the same thing. Every 2 years, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl.
Really? Yeah.
Boy.
Boy. Okay. Yeah.
5. 3 boys, 2 girls. Same thing.
Yeah.
Someone told me that you have the $1 million family when you have a boy and a girl. And you should just stop there.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I remember somebody told me too. Yeah. Yeah, like the millionaire's family is always an older boy, and then second born's a girl. Like, because that's what you see in like all those movies where it's like millionaire families and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just give you some background on how Stephen and I connected and the industry he's in with That One Painter. As you all know, I'm the founder of 5 Star Painting. I sold the business to Neighborly in 2015 and know the painting industry very, very well. And then years ago, I heard about this business that was coming out called That One Painter. I thought that's an interesting name. And it just seemed like all of a sudden he was everywhere. And I wanted to make sure we had him on the show to talk about how he's managed to grow his business so quickly. Backstage, we talked a little bit about some of that. What is interesting is he's taken that passion for business and home services and he's taken it into a few other categories with garage and with window cleaning. Let's get right to the story, Stephen. What got you going into franchising and painting? Like what made you think you started a painting company?
So my dad was a painter when I was in high school for a short period of time. So he ran his own painting company for about a year. And I would paint houses with him like weekends and one summer. And so I remember I was like 14 years old. I was standing on a ladder, scraping siding in the middle of the winter. And most kids probably would have hated it, but I was having fun. I actually was dreaming of like hiring my friends and starting my own painting company because my dad was paying me $8 an hour, and I knew he was charging me over $30 an hour. So I was like, I could do that. I could just hire my friends and pay them $8 an hour. Well, that's 2004 for you. So, but anyways, my dad quit doing it. I finished high school, went to college for a little while, dropped out. My mom became a realtor at that point, and so I took her my dad's old painting equipment, and I'd paint for her clients as a side gig, and then got okay at painting. I got married, dropped out of college, got married, and then 2 weeks after our honeymoon, I was doing some subcontract work for another painting company, and I called my wife. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to do my own thing. I figured out that we'll make enough money with your Starbucks wages if tips are good to cover rent and groceries. And I was like, I got to do this. You got to let me. And so I was on the phone. I got her okay, hung up, then called my boss and was like, hey, I can't work for you anymore. Starting tomorrow, I'm doing my own thing. So I just painted houses by myself. And I did that for like a year, then grew into a couple crews, got kind of comfortable at a couple crews. So that was 2011 that I started my own business. Honestly, like was really comfortable with just a few crews for years. Didn't really have a lot of goals beyond that. Just had made a nice living, had my own business. And then in 2018, I really shifted my mindset and started reading a lot of business books and decided I want to be one of the biggest painting companies in Texas. And so really grew the business from there. Started hiring managers and sales guys.
What was the book that gave you the inspiration?
21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership was the book that like changed my life. I realized like how many things like that I wanted, like if I just grew as a leader and could lead people better, I could achieve. And then a friend of mine also gave me the E-Myth, and that led to ultimately me also wanting to franchise. But in the beginning, when I read the E-Myth, it just challenged me to write SOPs and actually have a system.
Yeah.
That was the first phase. I wasn't even thinking about franchising. I was just thinking I need to improve these systems and do a better job for myself. And that was a big moment. And there was also another moment that was kind of like a spark moment. I was listening to like this recording of a Tony Robbins interview, and he was talking to this photographer, and she said, like I can't get any of my clients to be okay with the other photographers on my team. They always want me. People pay for me to go all over the world and take photos or video, but they won't trust my team. And he goes, that's because you're not an entrepreneur. You just are self-employed and have a profitable reputation. He goes, you don't have a real business until people trust the business, not you. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, if I don't show up to the paint job, the customers aren't happy. And I realized I didn't have a system. I didn't really have a business. I was just a decent painter who made customers happy. And I had some painters that worked with me, but if I wasn't there, it didn't go the way it was supposed to. And so once I really started focusing on the system and all that kind of stuff, is when I think I turned into a real entrepreneur. And then from there, I was able to keep scaling and growing. And then ultimately we got into franchising.
So you mentioned 2018 was the year that you really had your own painting company. And then you started thinking about when was the very first franchise sold for that one painter?
So we announced that we would franchise in June of 2021. And so we sold our first franchise.
Almost 3 years after you had the idea.
Yeah. Kind of like I had a nice, 3-crew company for years. Then in 2018, I changed my mindset, doubled my revenue, doubled it again in 2019, doubled again in 2020. In 2021, I announced that I was franchising and sold 2 franchises within 30 days. And then
we were
from
talking
there,
backstage, those first few franchises came from friends, family, the usual suspects.
Friends, family, anybody that was in my phone book was a candidate.
This is like super valuable. I want to spend some time on this because I don't know if we spend enough time on these video calls I do on like the genesis of a franchise concept and how someone goes from an idea to something that is actually scalable, right? I think you mentioned E-Myth. I think I've read the book as well. It was a source of inspiration, right? This whole idea that so many people are the technician. They're very, very good at the job of the example they use is baking bread. Like you've got someone that can make bread. That doesn't mean they could actually run a bakery, right? And so you've got this like element of technical expertise, entrepreneurial mindset, and then managerial capabilities. And so this convalescence of those 3 skills that actually help somebody then scale a business, whatever the business may be in. And so when you read that book and you started thinking about, I want to grow this business, you mentioned you doubled it, year after year after year. What changed? I know you may have realized you wanted something bigger, but what did you change in the business that allowed you to double year after year after year? Did you just get serious about it? Did you start spending more money on marketing? Did you find some kind of like special recipe to get customers? What was it you found out and figured out to help grow the business like that?
Yeah, it was very simple things. Like it's things that like seem simple to me now, but at the time felt monumental.
Mm-hmm.
Which was I worked on my own leadership, like my own personal development, challenged myself to become better. I started getting Google reviews and actually caring about like modern marketing a bit, you know. I also started to recruit team members, and I hired people that would come onto the team and help me project manage and do administrative work and all that. And literally I built systems. Up until that point, I sent all estimates through Google Docs and I used QuickBooks for accounting. Like that was it. I didn't have a CRM. I didn't have anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just had a lot of happy customers who knew my name. And then I sent them a little Google Doc with an estimate. And then they would just text me or call me and say, looks good. And I would put it on my written calendar. So, you know, and that was, I didn't have a system. I didn't have any of that. And so just focusing on the system, getting into a CRM, tracking things, working on getting more Google reviews, hiring a team, reading a lot of like leadership books for myself. And then I also started writing SOPs and documenting I started documenting how I painted, how I did sales, how I did all that so I could teach other people. And that led to rapid growth because I could actually trust people to do things for me. Whereas prior to that, I didn't at all.
You know, there's I've seen this happen where people put the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
They don't perfect the money tree. Like franchising is
Yeah.
just people want to buy a young sapling that will grow up into a tree one day that provides them fruit for the rest of their lives, right? That's kind of the
Yeah.
analogy. And often people just skip past it all and they just do not create the systems and processes that can scale. And so I'd like to, maybe if you don't mind, what worked? Would you say there's one thing or there's a couple things that you would say that one painter does really, really well for its franchisees? Like, are you really good
Yes.
at acquiring customers? Do you
Mhm.
know how to find them for the friend? And if it is really what you do really well, what is that thing? And how did you standardize it?
Love it. So I think we do one thing really well, which is customer acquisition, right? Right. And getting customers through the door and then making them wildly happy. So I'll talk about the first part is like, the first part is the analogy I use is that like business is like boxing and you want to be in the fight with two fists. Right. And if you're in the fight with one fist, it'll just feel like you're just getting punched in the face and it sucks. And for me, what it means there is like how you actually grow a business and get customers. And so one side of it is the digital marketing side. It's Google, Facebook, Yelp, Thumbtack, all the Angie, all those lead platforms. But if you just rely on those, like you're going to be in the fight with one fist and you're going to get hurt. The other side is what I call the 5 R's of revenue, which is real estate agents, referrals, repeat business, reviews, and all of your other relationships. And when you have that and you have a digital, then you can go out and fight and build a business in the modern age. But you can't just rely on marketing. It's too expensive and it's not sustainable. And then you're also just a subject to the internet gods. Whereas with the 5 R's of revenue, which can be summarized as just old school, right? A handshake, a smile, and a business card. It's not rocket science. When you have both of those combined, you can go into the fight and actually build a significant business in home services. And there's a lot of home service professionals who are just doing the 5 R's. They're just doing old school. Mm-hmm. And then you have sometimes newer businesses trying to get into it, but they're only doing the new school. You have to have both. And so we track everything as well, very closely on both sides. Both fists, we track it very carefully for people and help them develop both sides. And the other part is like, our whole thing is like, if you're going to get a lot of referrals and you're going to get a lot of repeat business, you have to go above and beyond for your customers. Like it is not good enough to just do a good job, right? So every contractor says, I'm going to do a great job for you. Okay. Like that's like Chick-fil-A saying the chicken won't be pink, right? It's like a restaurant promising you won't get sick. It's like, well, I didn't know that needed to be said. I just thought that is what it meant to work with you.
Yeah, right.
I think people want more. If you need to wow customers because you want your customers to talk about you. You want them to rave about you. You want them to, when they go get drinks with their buddy, or go bowling with their friends or play bridge with their friends if they're older or whatever. Like you want them to be like, I gotta tell you about this company that I hired, right? They'll do that if they're mad at you, right? Like you don't have to ask for a 1-star review. If that's what you want, you'll get them for free. You can get a lot of them. It's really easy. But you have to work for your 5-star reviews. And like somebody who's like moderately happy with your service won't write you a review. They're not going to talk about you. They're not going to refer you. They're not going to introduce you to real estate agents. But somebody who's been wowed by your services, you went above and beyond. When you were painting, you also changed out all the batteries on their smoke detectors and high dusted all their ledges and offered to change out any light bulbs, or whatever. Like you do little extra things. Then they go from just a happy customer to a raving like sales advocate for you. And when you do that, we call it living our promises, going way above and beyond. Like that little bit of extra work can get you so many more customers than the best digital marketer in the world. And so we do digital marketing. I have an amazing team that does it for our franchisees. But I tell every single franchisee, your happy customers can do more than anybody on my team can.
That stuff is I want to come back to a few things you said because it's so important. If anyone's in the franchising game, if you're on this call, if you're new to franchising, if you're building a home service brand yourself, you have got to obsess about your customer experience.
Yeah.
As the CEO, the leader of your organization, you have to obsess about it. You have to be thinking about it constantly. How do I make sure that every touch point a customer has with my home service brand is one where they get wowed? Like, oh, you answered the phone. Or when I texted you, you responded within 5 minutes. Like in our business, we have a company called ProNexis. I know you have Resi Connect. ProNexis does all of our brands' customer experience solution. And we measure across all like tens of thousands of phone calls a week. We're measuring how fast we're answering the phone call, how long did that call last, did that result in an estimate or a job, where did those jobs come from? The analytics element, which you mentioned as well, is critical.
Yes.
If you obsess with the customer experience, that means you're measuring every element of the customer experience from the very first touch point to when the estimate is provided to when the job is done and the review that's finally provided. You have to measure all those things, and your whole organization has to be spending time thinking about how do we improve. You only improve things you measure, and if you obsess about things, you'll measure them. And then you'll improve them. And so I think there is this like cycle of constantly improving your systems by measuring those things is so critical. I wanted to go into back to the story. You mentioned in 2021 you sold your very first franchise. So let's get into the whole franchising, because now you've told us how you thought about building a painting company, and then you now are getting into how do I build a franchise company, which like. Yeah. Just because you can paint really well does not mean you can franchise really well. But you've done it. Like very few have. You've actually managed to take a painting concept and franchise it to scale.
Yeah.
Talk us through those early days of franchising. First of all, how did you discover franchising? What made you think you could even do it? Right? Like what gave you the idea that somehow this could be something you could actually achieve? And then the very early days, that first year, how did you get those first franchisees in? And tell me, like, how are they doing today? Those franchisees you sold, those first few in 2021.
Yeah. A few things there. Yeah. So the first part, like, how did I have the confidence to do this? I don't know. Like, truthfully, like when I look back, if I could go back, I would have waited another year and I would have even continued to work on the systems, because when we launched our first few franchisees, I immediately noticed, they need more than I gave them. And we really worked with them and started immediately working on the systems again so that they would be next level. And so I think that like nobody gets like any applause for a foundation, and so everybody wants to rush to building the next part. But like if you're going to build something significant, like I think every founder, every CEO, if they look back, they would go, I would have spent even more time on the foundation. Like right, hindsight 2020. We move forward, we do what we do. But I think everybody who's achieved anything, they would always look back and go, yeah, if I could have just spent more time on that foundation, this would have been easier. Right. And so that's one of the things I've noticed. But the other is, so how did we get into franchising? What made me confident about it? I did the math over and over and over again, and I came to the conclusion that if I could not sell and get 20 franchisees launched, it wasn't worth it. If I was
You
going to
couldn't-
get stuck at 5 or 10 or 15, I just did the math over and over, and I was like, it's not worth the work to do it.
Yeah,
I would
you're right.
rather just own a few corporately owned locations. It would cost me less money. I'd make more money off of 5 corporate locations than I would off of a bunch of my first set of franchisees. So like, if I can't get past 20, I still want to do it. And so I just really asked myself, can I get 20 people in the door, and how long would it take to not only get them signed, but get them successful? Like when I say 20, I don't mean sold. I mean launch and happy and happily paying royalties.
Yeah.
Right.
I-
And
That
so
sounds like Shangri-La. I don't know, happily paying royalties. I guess it could happen. It may be.
I have a few franchisees that say every time the royalty thing goes through, I'm happy because I know that I'm building a business, and that meant that I had a good week, month, whatever.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
good. That's great.
no, I don't think anybody enjoys paying royalties.
It's like taxes, right?
If they
I keep
know what
telling
it
myself,
means to their more royalties meant they had more business and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff too. So there's
good
lots of good
positive.
franchisees who understand it, right? But and so I came to the conclusion, I was like, I'm pretty confident I can do 20 because I was committed. I knew that I had people I could sell to. I had a back pocket sale ready to go. A very good friend of mine that was ready to go. Like he was like, yeah, if you launch this thing, I'll buy the first one, and he did. And then we sold to a few other friends and family members and other people we knew. We got to 7 like in a matter of just a few months. And that's when we realized, all right, this getting to 20 is not going to be that hard. We've got some good traction. And so we set the goal to get to 200 territories. And I thought it would take 5 or 6 years. It's not even been 3 years, and we're past 300 now. And so it's been a wild season, and it's been a lot of growth. But I think that when I look at what we did right early on, and what I believe we're still doing right now, is that like I am obsessed with making franchisees as happy as I possibly can, as successful as I can. One of my executives, he said it when he interviewed, he asked me, well, what are your goals? And I said to support my franchisees better than anybody else would. I didn't mention any other goal. And I think that right there, like if you can embrace that and really push quality, John Maxwell is like a mentor for ResiBrands, and he says that if you prioritize quality, quantity will be demanded of you. And so I think with people like quality or quantity, it's both. You have to have both. But if you prioritize quality, quantity will be demanded of you. People will say, I need more. I want more. I will buy more. And so you got to prioritize quality. And for franchising, the quality is the proof's in the pudding. The proof's in the franchisee. Are they successful? And so that always be the priority. And so my whole team, support team, they all know that that's our priority at all times.
A few thoughts came to mind as you were talking. One is perfection can be the enemy of progress. You mentioned how like the foundation you create in a business, it can be easy for us to obsess so much about making it perfect that we don't make any progress. We're spending so much time on the recipe.
Yes.
We're not actually getting out there and doing it, because in doing it, you create a feedback loop and you discover maybe what was working for you in creating a recipe won't work in a certain other market. You have to learn some new things. And so it'll never be perfect. But you have to get to the point where it's good enough that it can provide the franchisee the basis and foundation to create a great business.
That's exactly right.
The other thought I had was there's a book I read. There's a book
we talk a lot about excellence here, and we say that excellence does not mean perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. So if you're pursuing it, you're just being picky. And so if that excellence is good enough for somebody to be successful, I think you said it 100%. Like that's exactly right. So
when the last year in 2023, how many territories did you guys sell?
I don't remember the exact number from last year, but it would be over 200.
So I want to spend some time on this because for any franchisor, and we've experienced something similar with one of our brands. We have a brand called 5-Star Bath Solutions.
Yeah,
we've owned it for years, and what I noticed is we kept working on the model to the point where the item 19 became so attractive that then
Hmm.
we add 150 territories in a year.
It's
And that
awesome.
that happens because the model just is so good, and the franchisees are so satisfied with the growth they're achieving that ultimately, if, as you said, if you provide quality, quantities will come, right? And that's what
Hmm.
happens. And so I want you
Yeah.
to just help us understand, like, what would you say were the things that you did that added the most value to your franchisees that set you up for this kind of growth? Because adding 200 territories, I don't know of many brands in the United States that does that. So it's
Yeah.
incredible. What did you do? What did you do that was any specific things you did that you said, oh, that thing unlocked a lot of value within the organization?
Yeah, I would say that, like, there's some of the obvious ones that franchisees want. They want the in-house marketing. They like the in-house, appointment center. There's things like that. But then there's this, and then everybody kind of says, well, the system's really good. The training's really good. What I've noticed, and for me, like, I'm a system builder. I like building processes. I like strategy. But what I have on my team are some amazing implementers and coaches. And so they'll take the system and the strategy that I've developed and they help people actually get a hold of it. Because an SOP is only as good as the behaviors that it causes. Right. And so if you can write out the best system and strategy and instructions in the world, but if the franchisee or the franchisee's employee doesn't fully embrace it and it
Yeah.
becomes habitual behaviors, you won't have a successful brand. And what I've noticed is, for me, I'm really good at building it. I'm actually not very good at getting everybody to embrace it. And so I have amazing team members that they're just so good at that coaching and implementation to get people on board with stuff. And I think that
Mhm.
that's not talked about enough. It's like, I built this great system and then everybody just did it. And it's like, no, in the middle, there was somebody that helped everybody embrace it, understand its importance, and fully run with it. And so I think that piece, like my business partner, and he's my cousin, Alan, he's really good at that piece. I've got Sean on my team, our chief sales officer, and a number of others, even some of our franchisees that kind of like spearhead things and lead other franchisees into new programs. There's people who just help us get people fully on board, and that piece is so critical, especially when you're in a high growth season.
How many coaches or ops people would you say you guys have at that one banner?
So non like marketing or Resi Connect staff, operations team is probably 25 to 30.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Yeah.
a big
And then our
investment. We need
entire
that.
staff, including Resi Connect and accounting and marketing, we're 75 or so support
Yeah.
in Resi.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. I had a question here for you, Stephen, from Steve. He says, what is the territory size that you guys do it by
Yeah.
population or by household?
We, for that one, painter, we do a minimum or approximate of 200,000. I believe our average is 268,000 people. Population is the first thing we look at, but it's not the only thing we look at. We look at drive time. We look at households. We look at how many Sherwin-Williams are in the area. There's a lot of things that we look at in building a territory. And so some will be much bigger than that if the renter pop is too high or the income is too low. They'll
Mm,
be over 300,000. But if they're, there's territories that are only 180,000 that I think are prime, like just
yeah.
ready to go because it's all of our customers. So it just really depends on the number. We look at 15 variables. For garage up and pinks, the territories are slightly bigger.
Why?
Again, we keep it very vague. It's all we just all of our what is it, item 13 or whatever, it all says 200,000 approximately for all three brands. But we have 15 other things we look at behind the scene, and we develop a territory we feel confident on.
Why did you choose population over households? Because you paint houses, right?
Yeah, we also do a good chunk of commercial, and so
Oh,
it's part of what we look at as well. And so, I mean, we are residential first, but we do commercial, and like paint, window cleaning is about 50-50 commercial, residential. Garage up, we're starting to get a lot more into commercial as well. So that's part of what we look at is um, commercial opportunity as well.
Amanda's got a question here about getting started. How did you find? How do you or your franchisees find trusted subcontractors, or do you guys use subcontractors? I made a presumption there. I don't know.
Yeah. We use majority subcontractors, and so
Okay.
we have a unique subcontractor model in the way that we train and vet and all that kind of stuff. I think it's unique. It's not complete. It's not. I wouldn't say it's proprietary, but it is unique. We have our own way of doing it. But as far as finding subcontractors, I don't think it's very hard to find painting subcontractors. There's a watering hole. They're all at the paint store anyway. So if you just post up, shop, hand out some free breakfast tacos and start talking to people, you'll find plenty of subcontractors. There's also all these like Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff for contractors that you can join. And so once you have some subs, now you're interviewing them, vetting them, and then you're finding the good ones. That's the hard part. And the hard part there, it does take some time. It's a learning curve. And we do a lot of coaching and support with our franchisees early on. Garage Up is also a subcontractor model with some employees, but we do both. And then Pace is all employees. So, yeah.
I know that you mentioned Sherwin-Williams as a partner for you at That One Painter. We, back in the day, Five-Set Painting partnered with Sherwin-Williams as well. I found that and this is probably true of all the brands we have, the 6 brands we have at 5-Star Franchising, many times our supplier partners have relationships with people who install or in this case, paint that product, and they know who the best ones are and then who wants to keep busy. And so we found that working with reps allows us to find the right subcontractors in most of our brands.
We do that as well. And like Garage Up, like with the garage door vendors and stuff, they give you a whole list of subcontractors to call. So there's a lot of ways to find subcontractors. Yeah. Ultimately, you're trying to build a team that you trust, that when you assign them a job, they're going to do it to your expectations. So that's the trickier part, is really building that quality team.
Yeah, good question, and thank you. Johnny's got a good question here. Not one I don't think I've ever been asked on this show, and this is our 36th episode, so it's the first time I've heard this one. How do you know you're getting paid all your royalties?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, you got to audit that, right? You got to make sure that that's happening. We track everything. We do audit. So, man, we're getting into really fun topics, huh?
Yeah. Franchisees love that word, audit.
Yeah. We have a protocol. So where there's smoke, there's fire. So if something seems sketchy, it might be. Yes, we have a way of doing it. We have done it. We've done an audit when we felt like maybe there was some under the table work happening. And we start calling customers and painters, and pretty quickly you can start lining up things and see if things match.
It's I will say, Johnny, that on this topic, there's a few things that I think that are valuable. One, if you have a strong supplier relationship where your franchisees are buying the product, then you know how much product they're buying, and there's always a ratio of product to sales. So if it's off, you gotta look at that. In this case, if Steven has, with Resi Connect, you have the front end of the customer experience. You know all the phone calls coming in. Similarly with ours, ProNexis, all the calls for all our franchisees come through our system. So we know how many calls I got, how many customers got estimates. And so if they're not landing the right appropriate amount of jobs, there's an issue, and we can take a look at it. I personally can't stand the word audit. I'm so much more of a fan of focusing on growth and then that versus trying to, but you trust, but you do need to verify. And so we do put a carrot out there. We pay franchisees a portion of their ad fund fees back to them. And it's either quarterly or annually if they provide us all their audited requirements. And so we don't use that word. It's just their financials and their other reports they provide. No one likes that word. But it needs to be done. I've actually had some franchisees tell me how that they know if another franchisee is cheating, and they'll say that you need to look at that person because I pay my fair share and I get all this value back, and I want to make sure everyone else is paying their fair share as well. So to be a good franchise citizen of a brand, it is important to kind of keep current.
It's that trust. In relationships and support go farther than audits or any of that will ever go. But you do have to have some sort of protocol to verify things, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed. I know, Johnny, you mentioned here that are your audits on an exception basis only, or do you have a random program also? we use the term financial review. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that word way better than, and not just that, but I
Financial
actually
review.
said that there is a, in our team at Five Star, I talked about how the financial review element does provide benchmarking and best practices for the entire model. And so you want to have all that information to tell franchisees where their costs need to line up and all different line items in their P&L. So there's a lot of value there when you do get it. And I don't know, to answer your question though, Johnny, I don't know if we ever do random audits, although it might happen. Do you do random audits, Stephen, or do you do it just on a, okay.
Yeah.
Probably should, but I don't think we do.
Yeah.
Adam has a question here. What is a typical involvement of your owners in their first 1 to 2 years? Are they full-time, part-time, absentee?
We have a mix. So if somebody is going to go into more of an absentee, semi-absentee, I hate the word absentee, but I understand the meaning of it. And so we have higher expectations on their capital and their experience. So people who are going into a model where they're going to hire a GM or a director to oversee things, there's a lot more expectation on that person and their prior experience and the amount of capital they have. And so we have a mix. And so what I believe is that, franchises should be scalable, not just for the franchisor, they should be scalable for the franchisee. So if a franchisee only has the opportunity to own one, to me, that is a reflection of the franchise system not being good enough. That being said, people also need to show that they're capable of growing multiple units, and we need to see something in their past that shows they would be capable of that. So just selling multiple units to anybody, I think, could also be a little bit careless.
Yeah, there's I think through all we have about 1,500 territories now at the Five-Star platform level, and I can think through every year at the convention, we see all our franchisees and we hear their stories and we give rewards and awards for their performance. And we've got a couple of franchisees that own 3-4 markets that can do 10 million plus out of one model. So it can't happen, right? But you are right, Stephen. It's a unique person and skill sets that can get to that kind of scale. But your model needs to be good enough that almost anyone can do 2 or 3 territories and get to that point where they no longer have to be engaged full time. I just had a call with one of these individuals the other day, and I asked them how much time they spend on their business now, and I was told 5 to 6 hours a week. Okay. That sounds like they finally achieved what they're looking for, right? Get to the business to the point where they have all their aces in their places. The business is now running, and now they're playing owner, not operator. And so that should be, I think, the goal. This should be the goal, I believe, of every business owner, is to be in a position where they built something.
I agree completely. I think if you're always going to be owner operator, then you're a glorified shopkeeper for the brand, right? And so I think that you have to be able to scale into it, and grow something that you are proud of. It's something that somebody else would want to buy, because nobody wants to buy a job. And so if you're going to build a sellable, scalable business, it needs to be something that has managers in place that are running the day-to-day operations. We have something we call it the CEO model. So if you buy 5 territories or more, we call it the CEO model, and you hire a director who oversees each territory manager, and we scale people at that level. We have people that have bought as many as 17 territories in that model, and so I'm a big fan of that. But again, if they can actually scale something, and so we don't want people to. I tell franchisees in the candidate process all the time, I'm not in the business of selling units. I am in the business of helping people build thriving businesses. And so don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, just, but what about this territory? I'm just worried somebody else will buy it. I'm like, if you don't feel very confident that you can grow it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
And so that's my motto. Because I okay, I sold a territory, but then what if it never gets developed? You know what I mean? Or they get stuck and I can't launch this one. Now I need to resell it or whatever. I'd rather not be in that position. I'd rather people take the amount that they feel confident that they can actually develop in a good amount of time.
Well, I think you've hit the record. I don't know any franchisee in our system that owns 17 territories. So you've done it. Congratulations.
and that's somebody who owns a significant amount of other businesses already. So it's somebody who's proven themselves, owns multiple other franchise brands, stuff like that. So
Did that before. Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
I love that. I'd love for you to share with our listeners, what are the most important KPIs that you use to manage your business?
Yes. We look at close rate as far as their sales. We look at average job size. And then we look at their revenue goals. We look at their gross profit, net profit, all that good stuff. The thing that I think is the most important, because it's your daily actionable, is what we call estimates per day. And so we run this formula. I call it my $1 million formula. And you basically say, look, if my revenue goal is $1 million per territory, whatever you're going to shoot for, you need to reverse engineer that into how many estimates per day do you need to do. And so I have a formula. Again, this is from a college dropout who also didn't even take algebra. I took like what my friends joked was dumb kid math. They called it aggregated math or well, not aggregated math. I don't know what it's called. But I took like the dumber kid. Like I couldn't do algebra, so they put me in dumb kid math. But I have my own formula now. And you basically just reverse engineer your goal into a daily actionable, how many estimates per day you need to do. And we have one set up for each brand. So when they have a certain target, you help them figure out how many estimates per workday do you have to do. And so you wake up in the morning and you know what a win looks like every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously there's a front of that is how many leads you're getting, right? Before you get to the estimates, but also that implies that they're doing the 5 hours. Like there's stuff that's coming from, as you mentioned before, the digital world that's feeding your system, keeping your estimators busy, but then you've got your network that's also feeding you. What is that number? Like how many estimates per day do your owners have to achieve to hit your $1 million formula?
2 on average. And
they do
in that one painter.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And in again, assuming the other things are correct, like you have to have the right average job size, the right close rate, all the right amount of leads. Like you have to make sure the whole formula is right. But if you get it right, 2.5 a day, you'll hit your numbers. In pinks and in garage up, I think it's 3 because they're a little bit lower average drop ticket. Yeah. And so, but yes, that's the formula. And so, and I tell everybody, I'm like, there is no excuse. Once you know what the EPD is, that's what we call it, estimates per day. There's no excuse. Just do it. Like I know that if I Google it, it didn't give me anything today, but I can call real estate agents for 2 hours and I will have 2 estimates on my calendar.
I love that. I love the attitude and that laser focus on what will actually drive the value you need to get to the goal of $1 million. And it puts so much more responsibility on the owner, the franchisee. Like you said, if they don't get enough leads today for an investment, 2 is not a big deal. 2 estimates takes you about 3 hours. That means you've got 5 hours of selling to do. So I love it. I love that focus. And to come back to our listeners, Adam has a question here for you. He said, you mentioned initially selling franchises to people you know, and you've grown a ton since then. Are you still mostly selling to referrals from your system or through franchise consultants? And how do you find your owners?
Yeah. The first year we didn't use franchise consultants or brokers whatsoever. We sold to people we knew and then referrals that came from that. And in year 1, I also only pretty much sold single territory owners, owner operators. In year 2, we started to branch out from that, started working with consultants and whatnot. And now in what we're in now through year 3, a majority of our franchise candidates do come from franchise consultants. Yeah,
it'd be worth the space of time. It'd be worth spending some time for Adam and anyone else who's not been familiar with franchise consultants, right? There are a number of networks. Let's just kind of go through them, Stephen. Who are the networks you work with right now at ResiBrands? Yeah,
so we work with a lot of them. FranServe has been the initial one that we worked with. They've been a great partner to us, and we've had a lot of success with them. We've also had a few FranServe consultants that became franchisees of that one painter themselves. One also became a franchisee of Pinks. And so that's helped a lot. FranServe has been amazing to us. We're also FBA, IFPG, TES, FranChoice, we just joined. So there's others that we are making great traction with. And consultants, they're a great third party voice. They're that non-biased voice for a franchisee. And I think that they are needed in the industry. And I think it allows a franchise candidate to really look at their options and to have somebody that can kind of consult them and help them make a good decision. And so I think it's a good thing to work with consultants. And I think for people who are looking to get into a franchise, I think they should. I think it's a nice third party voice. So
I think it's really important that if you are going to be using a broker strategy in your business, and when we use brokers at 5-Star, I want to say about 75% of all the sales that we have at 5-Star come from a broker partner or a franchise consultant. You're committing to pay 50, 60% of your franchise fee to the broker in the form of a commission. You're committing to go to their annual conventions and travel and spend time with them, all those on those relationships. There's a cost of joining many of these organizations. Some, and there's different levels you can join. You can join for as little as like 5,000, maybe 50,000, depending on the network and the level at which you join. So it's a strategy that from my experience, most brands break even on. So whatever your franchise fee is, let's say you charge $50,000, almost all of that will go towards supporting the entire franchise sales process with broker partners or with your inside, because you still have an inside sales team. Like, although you have a franchise consultant that's actually taking candidates through the process, you still need someone on your team who are handling those leads and then bringing them through and closing. So it's not like you don't have to, you mitigate that investment. You still require that investment. And I think you said backstage about 90% or so of your deals come from franchise consultants.
Probably nearly 90. Yep. At least now. Like if we look at the whole 3 years, it's less than 90%, but probably about 90% of what's coming in right now is through FranServe or other consultant groups.
And a lot of that success came in this last year. 200 locations sold. In 2021, you didn't have any. I think the key there is with broker partners, they want a concept that's proven it's working and that can validate. Franchisees, if a candidate were to call a franchisee, they get a review. And so it's a strategy you implement after you've got your model, not perfect, but it's got the foundation that you need, and you've got franchisees that can validate. When that happens and you've got a white space and it's a good category, you tend to see things that come together pretty well. You come to a question here that Cliff has. Do you have a team of franchise business coaches that get out in the field with your franchisees? I know you mentioned you have about 25 operations team. How many franchise business consultants do you have actually out there visiting with franchisees at That One Painter, for example?
6 at That One Painter that are out there either virtually supporting our franchisees directly or they're in the field visiting. That's what we have right now.
So that's, you look at that ratio, it's like 1 to every 35 people or so. If you have 200 owners.
We're at 1, so per owner, it's about a 1 to 25 ratio.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Hopefully answer your question, Cliff. And I've got a question from Becca. What, if anything, are you doing differently to find candidates for Pinks and Garage Up compared to the first year of That One Painter? Did you change your formula at all for those 2 other brands?
Yeah, we did, because we are already in these consulting groups and stuff. We were selling more with consultants in the beginning with those brands than we did with That One Painter. However, both of those brands, also the first few that came in were through relationships and whatnot. We didn't immediately go to consultants. We did sell the first several through relationships that we had through That One Painter or through other relationships or referrals. So we did get the initial kind of training launch of people who came in through other avenues and then took it to consultants. And so similar foundation, just sped up because we have a lot more experience.
Do you find, Stephen, that you've got That One Painter franchisees buying a Pinks or buying Garage Up?
Yeah. It'll pick up even more, but we do have some that have already purchased. So
for you, it's part of your strategy. You've actually kind of built these other models as really potentially add-ons for franchisees that are ready for
it. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe we call it the stack model here. And so you can grow wide through one brand, go into more markets, or you could grow deep by adding more brands. And there's advantages to growing in the same city with multiple brands, is because every customer could become 2 customers or 3 customers, because they could buy each of your services from each of your brands, versus the simplicity though of staying with one brand and just kind of rinse and repeat. Learning another trade and all that has its disadvantages as well. And so it's really up to the franchisee to choose how they would like to scale.
I'll make a comment here that I think is interesting. You've got 2 brands that are repair maintenance type brands, right?
Yeah.
Or install brands, like
Mhm.
Garage Up and and that one painter.
Yeah.
Then you've got kind of a recurring service model, which is
Yeah.
washing windows. I'm assuming you're going every quarter or every 2-3 months or something like that, and on contracts.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
I think there's a lot of synergy happens when you see a brand that has a recurring model that now actually can tack on a one-time service that happens every 8 years kind of thing. And I found with
Yes.
our like, for example, we have a brand called Mosquito Shield. It does mosquito
Hmm.
control, and then it does Christmas lights. They aren't the
Yeah.
same at all, but they both are recurring and they feed off each other. In fact, many of the customers that
Love it.
do Mosquito Shield control will actually hire us for our Christmas lights installations. So I think it's interesting.
That's awesome.
Maybe we're coming near the end of our interview. This has been great. I'd love for you to maybe just pontificate a little bit about going back, and if you could do something over again, like what did
Mhm.
some nice golden nuggets you could share with our listeners, or there's some things you would have done differently, knowing what you know now, if you could start all over again back to 2021.
Yeah. I think we touched on this before we were recording a little bit, right? About foundation. For me, like if I could do anything differently, it would be spend more time on the foundation. And so spend more time on your system, spend more time going as deep as you can with your foundation. Because you don't get any applause, you don't get any credit for a foundation. You get no glory, right? Nobody sees it yet, but it will help you sustain everything else you want to do. And so for me, like looking back at like what we have done, I would, if I'm given the opportunity, there's, many things I would not change at all, but I think given the opportunity, I would always go back and just work on those systems and dialing in the processes even more for franchisees in the beginning. Other than that, man, like so much of what we've done though, like you couldn't have predicted, and so you just learn as you go. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no perfect strategy. You just have to be prepared to pivot and prepared to adjust. And I think the best leaders are flexible. They know that their strategy is not perfect. And once you start implementing and going, you have to listen to the feedback of your team. You have to listen to the feedback of your franchisees and quickly adapt again. So even though I would go back and adjust the foundation, I would not stop being the person that I am that quickly changes things when I realize they're not right.
You mentioned getting feedback from your franchisees. Do you use any tool in particular to get that feedback from them or measure their satisfaction?
We use the FAC for that one, painter. We are about to start doing some surveying as well. We haven't done that yet,
Okay.
but we would like to kind of anonymous surveying. Let them rate different things and different services so that we can continue to get better in a way that they can speak freely. They speak pretty freely to the FAC, so that helps a lot. And we have an amazing FAC who I work really well with, and they help us get things the way that franchisees, ultimately it's the same goal, so make everybody successful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I do love. I had someone on the show a while back who mentioned that what she does is she actually uses anonymous surveys to do net promoter scores of franchisees on the model,
Uh-huh.
and not just that, but actually by department. So they'll have that
Cool.
score on,
Yep.
for example, the FBCs, or in your case, it could be your call center, or it could be your marketing support center. Actually ranking those in a way that allows you to know like where are the areas we need to focus on improving the foundation, right? And so I think that's a good piece of advice for everyone. You mentioned a book that I have not read that I know. I'm a huge reader, so I 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It's now on my list
Yep.
of things. Any other book you would recommend to our listeners to read if they're in franchising you think would help them?
I'm working through Traction right now, and I know that's one that everybody loves. It's a lot of things that are in the E-Myth are also laid out in Traction, but from a very different perspective. And so I think it's really good. I love the E-Myth. I love 21 Laws. Traction. I'm working through Alex Hormozy's $100 million leads right now,
Oh yeah,
as well. And he wrote it like he was trying to explain marketing to a fifth grader, which is what I think most people need.
yeah.
So,
No,
I think it's great.
it is.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'll just kind of add to that comment on the book Traction by Gino Wickman. We use EOS as we call a management operating system at 5-star. All our brands, all of our teams, our executive team all use it as a means to running the company. For years, we've used different systems, scaling up and others that we are a modified version of my own managerial systems. What I've loved about Fraction is it kind of keeps it really simple. It comes up with certain, words and vernacular to describe everything that's important to the business, how you measure things and how you manage things. And everyone gets on the same page. What I like the most is that every person in our company all speaks that language. And so it just makes things so much easier when we're managing through the organization. So I definitely recommend that to you all. Awesome. Any other last words of advice, Stephen, before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm speaking to just business owners in general, there's a lot of power in just getting started with that next idea, that next brand. If you're thinking about getting into business, you're a franchisee, you want to buy into a franchise brand. There's you're thinking about franchising your brand out to others. There's a lot of power in just getting started and to set your goals in increments that you can have a lot of wins. And so that, I think, allows people to get started. If you're thinking about this big thing you want to accomplish, that's where it can get really intimidating. Set as many wins up for yourself and just get started on the first one. So as I think about a painting brand, growing a national painting brand, I create all sorts of like mini goals inside of that. Like my goal is to, largest painting brand in the USA. Great, giant, massive goal that's going to take forever. But like, how long would it take me to be the #1 Google reviewed painting company in Texas? All right, so that's one of them. Let's work on that, which we achieved. How long will it take me to write more painting blogs than any other painting brand's done? Let's work on that one. Like, it's just that kind of stuff that like set up some other wins and just get going on some of them. And that would be that would be my advice, because if you have a lot of wins, we call it microdosing here. We microdose our wins. So you just take these tiny, because you get that little fix of accomplishing something, you get a high five, everybody cheers. You want that as often as you possibly can. And so set up for yourself and then also for your team little micro wins that you can hit weekly, monthly, and beyond. That'll all ultimately lead up to your big goal. So that would be my advice to any business owner.
Great words of advice. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and your participation.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.